A2IM, the collective voice of independent music.
I'm Kari Boston, and welcome to this panel, which is called Call to Order, Navigating and Negotiating an Indie Record Label Deal. I'm joined here today by Eric German and Alex Hock, both experts in the field. Hopefully we'll have a lively discussion for you here today, so let's get started. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Kari. Thanks for being here. Let's start from the beginning. So let's say you are working with a new, fresh, exciting artist, either as a legal representative for that artist or a label that wants to work with that artist. What are some of the factors to consider when you are planning your strategy to negotiate that deal?
Being that I am on the label end, it's usually, I'd like to come to the table with a certain familiarity with the attorney and the band. Obviously, I don't want it to just be robotic in the sense of, here's our deal, we're just negotiating back and forth. Like, this is creating a partnership amongst the artist and the label. As that representative, I definitely enjoy connecting on just somewhat personal, professional levels. Eric and I would go back to my start at Better Noise at 2017, which is not very long ago. It was forming a relationship with him and with anyone else that I negotiate with. It's getting on a phone, getting in a meeting, sitting down and just connecting, giving people an overview of who we are as a label, even if there is a familiarity with us. It's just getting to know our strategy, our day-to-day, what we do for marketing, all the digital end of things, that, how we operate. So it makes it a little bit easier to read that into a deal and explain it to the clients.
Yeah, from my perspective, I think Alex is correct. I think relationships are really, really key. I think if I'm at the table negotiating with a label on behalf of an artist, I'm doing so because I believe that this is potentially a good fit for that artist. In other words, I like to understand the context. And you say, what do I bring coming into a deal like this? I want to understand my client. I want to know who they are, where they're coming from, what special circumstances may be important to them going into this deal, what their leverage is, what their other opportunities were vis-a-vis this, what's important to them. This may be the right deal if we can get a certain deal point, or if we can have a certain accommodation made. So when I'm at the table and I'm speaking to someone like Alex, I know who that is. I understand their label. If I don't, and if I have no relationship, that's the very first thing I want to do is establish a rapport, a line of communication, hopefully some transparency, and some understanding who the client is. So they're not just another band coming across the desk. This is human beings. This is their life. This is what they have in front of them. So once I understand that, and I can make the label representative understand who these people are as well, we can just be really honest with one another if we trust each other and say, look, this one is different than the last deal we did because these people are this way. The lead singer's pregnant. This band has financial problems. These people can't tour appropriately. This guy has a side project. This one is interested in two different bands at the same time. Whatever it is, we can talk about that at the beginning and we can better understand. I think that provides a better framework for the deal.
I think one interesting thing about the relationship between the label and the attorneys that represent the artist is that relationship obviously evolves a lot throughout a pretty long-term deal, right? So if you have a 3 LP deal, you guys are working together for 5-7 years. How does that relationship shift when you're coming back to the table with, this artist that was a new artist 5-7 years ago is now very successful with the label, and the label obviously wants to continue working with the artist, and the artist wants to continue working with the label. How did the dynamic shift there? What kind of considerations do you look at then? Alex, do you want to start this one?
Yeah, I think Eric and I are in the midst of discussing something like this where, one of our bands has just become, very successful. They have been cooperative throughout the relationship. They've been doing all of the right things, checking off all of the boxes. So it makes the conversation a lot easier and just, I don't want to be like matter of fact, but it's just, I think once you have that relationship, it makes it, you come to terms quite quickly. I think it's the understanding of, since we've put in this amount of money up until this point, it only gives us incentive to keep the relationship going strong. You start talking about maybe a little more on the advance front to extend a deal for a few more LPs. You start looking at adjusting, the royalty structure. You can, it's just, it varies. But I think most importantly, it's first and foremost checking off the boxes to make sure that the relationship is strong. They've been behaving, and and then you figure out what each side wants. Obviously, as the label, we want more albums to continue building that catalog. And then on the artist side, well, if they have a successful home, then it's just coming to terms that they might find more favorable.
I think the relationship is key, again, as we discussed in the last question. And I think coming into it, you hit the nail on the head when you said this is potentially a 3, 5, 7-year relationship, right? And it will change over time. What you needed at the beginning of the relationship might not be what you need in the middle of the end. Part of this stuff, again, the context is the king, right? The deal tells us what the deal needs to be. If you're dealing with fair partners that speak the same language, that understand each other, right? We know when a band is ready to improve their royalty structure. We know when a deal needs to get extended. We know what a fair advance calculation is, right? Once you've already established that this is the appropriate fit for this artist, right? The deal sort of reveals itself and it becomes real easy. Sure, there's going to be picadillo details of that deal that are contextual to that particular artist. But, I know Alex well enough that I can say, look, this is strange because of this reason. I also trust that they're going to do the right thing when we all know what the right thing is and get to a certain point where that requires, that's required to be done. So once again, I think the relationship can dictate that. And I think that, I don't like to over leverage a deal, right? I know that sounds crazy. I hear the artist running from the room, right? It's exactly the reason you said this is a 5-7-year relationship. So if I walk in the door and suddenly jack this label for like an advanced structure that is completely out of whack with what the artist is really going to do, we're going to have a resentful situation where the artist can't live up to those expectations and the spending is constantly being clipped and there's constantly complaining about this deal, right? Same on the other side. If the label does not take care of an artist and does not put them in a fair situation that's at least like close to market value, that artist is going to be resentful. That artist isn't going to want to perform. That artist is going to, quote unquote, talk crap out on the street. So I view my job, and I think Alex views her job, is we need to be the shepherds of the deal. We have to facilitate that deal and make it happen. When we have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and we have known terms and a trusted relationship, flows pretty easy from there.
The relationship is really a huge part of the way that the music industry works. It's a lot of people knowing each other, working with the same people over and over again. And so it's obviously very important to maintain those relationships. Obviously sometimes they're contentious, but everybody works together so much that, we make up, we keep working together. So we talked kind of generally about the relationships without being super boring and going through all the terms of a standard indie label deal. I think one thing that's probably interesting that you guys see is even as you're doing like a renegotiation, for instance, Eric, where you've had a successful artist or coming back to the table 5-7 years later, the music industry is obviously so dynamic, constantly changing, a lot to keep up with from a lawyer's standpoint. What terms are you seeing that may change from the first deal to the second deal? Where are you seeing evolving deal terms, maybe terms 10 years ago you thought would never change? What are these hot button topics?
the royalty rates, right? Streaming royalty rates is everything, right? Force majeure clauses, those have suddenly become a lot more important. But at the end of the day, it's really about the royalty rate and moving an artist from an initial deal that allows them to break, that allows a company to feel comfortable enough to invest the kind of money and the kind of time and resources into making the artist's career pop that artist is going to need. And therefore, the royalty rate and making money off the recorded deal at first is probably not as important to that artist. But years down the road, the artist wants to start seeing some sort of revenue. They want to become recouped and they want to get those royalty checks. And so my job is to get them in the door with the right partner at the beginning to make sure they have the opportunity to succeed and they can grow their fame and get their live business going and things like that. And then ultimately it becomes, how do I now make money off the record deal? And turning it from, you're going to invest in my brand and I'm going to reap the benefits in other ways, to we're going to work together to make money off recorded music.
Yeah. And in the same vein, I mean, as a label, we're coming to the table as the artist partner. And I think for us, because it's a partnership too, it's an investment on both sides. So, first and foremost, we like to make sure that the artist has a good team in place, people that are able to explain to them what's going on in the world, be able to dictate to them why our deal structure is the way it is, with the hope that down the line, we can just open the conversation again, should things, go well. I think when it comes to all the live recording, live streams, we're an artist development company. Alan Kovac has always been, always will be. He started off as a manager. And so I think in developing the partnership, I think it's important to not put an artist in the hole from the beginning. I'm sure Eric can understand that, but at the same time, on the artist attorney, they're trying to get money for their artists. Some of these guys are brand new and they don't have the touring income or anything else. So, but we're just trying to make sure that we are developing the artist and we're putting the money behind marketing and promotion. And, when it comes to live streaming, we very much have been working closely with our artists to make sure that everyone is in the know, doing the latest, Instagram, Twitch, well, not necessarily Twitter too much, but Patreon and so on and so forth. And we're pretty much saying, yeah, go and do this. We're not going to prevent you from doing it. And it's kind of it's more of a conversational approach than something that's cracked down in the agreement.
Yeah, I think that Alex is super correct when she's saying that these things come up kind of on a case-by-case basis. And when you have the proper platform to be able to have kind of a bed of understanding, I can call Alex and I can say, as circumstances have changed in this regard, or I know the contract says X, but can we really do Y? Maybe we can unlock this recording fund a little early. Maybe this band needs a particular accommodation in this regard for this period of time. And they're pretty cool. Not all that has to be baked into a contract. But I think as we understand coming into this next phase later down the line of how do we change the deal, it's really just my understanding in part that a label needs to make money, right? So, and I think my artists understand that. At the beginning of the conversation, the labels need to, they need to be able to bet on 10 artists and only have 4 or 5 of them really pop, right? Or whatever the metric is. I understand that not everyone's going to go. And so these deals need to reflect that at the beginning, and they need to give the label space to financially invest in this artist. They also need to have enough skin in the game so that they know that short-term spending isn't the game and it's long-term development. I'm looking for those kind of partners too, because my artists generally are artists that are more career artists rather than hit-based. And then finally, but going further down the situation, I now know, if we're talking years later and there has been success, that Alex knows that we entered the deal with those parameters in mind, with the understanding that when we got to this point, we would have a different conversation. So it makes it a lot easier.
Right. So you guys both kind of touched on the current environment, which is, COVID-19 and its massive impact on the music industry, on our artists. Are you noticing, okay, it sounds like you guys are already thinking about, you're seeing the live streams, you're seeing all these things that are coming kind of to take the place of the live recording, the live festivals that would be happening right now. Is the current environment changing how you think you'll approach negotiations? Is there anything that you're rethinking? I know for the live stream that you have touched on, it's obviously a great way to keep the artist, in the public eye, to be engaging with fans. But for a record label that doesn't, that's only asset is the recorded music, it is a big deal to be letting other platforms, be exploiting that. Have you guys been thinking about ways that this may change the way you've approached some of the standard terms?
I think, coming from the Better Noise perspective, since I've gotten there, and Alan has always been on the digital forefront, digital has always been a concept in our deals. I've developed it a little further as I sit in-house and see how digital marketing operates and our content creators. But I think we've always very much pushed it on our artists as a mandate to create engagement through social media, through online streaming. And if they're not doing it, then they are misbehaving. So I think for us, it is just a natural kind of progression. I think there's some artists that shy away a little more to being in the spotlight. And so now that's an interesting time for them. But our deal has always operated in the sense that, go forth and do this many posts per week. And so it's just kind of, but it's in the same vein, maybe it's making it a little more streamlined, easier, so Eric doesn't have to come to me for, one-off approval.
We need to get behind as a community. I think artists and labels can be and should be aligned, and it should be a unified thing between artists and record companies. And if I don't trust Alan Kovac, or if I don't trust MERLIN, or if I don't trust some of these, people who are indie champions, then I'd be crazy, right? So part of why I'm coming to the table as an artist lawyer and signing with a label like Alex's, I know they're going to negotiate the best situation for digital rights, and that's going to flow through to the benefit of my artists. And so, do I think that live streaming, it's perceived sometimes as an artist wants to do a live stream and a label needs to give up their rights. And what I hope that it shifts to is that the artist and label want to get paid for their content being exploited by these platforms of the internet.
Yeah, which comes into, the MERLIN side of things where, we are a MERLIN member company, and I currently sit on the MERLIN board, and there's a lot going into negotiations for, reviewing certain marketing provisions, allowing for more marketing opportunities, but at the same time, also figuring out, how to not give everything away for free. I think we operate on the basis that there's a lot that does have inherent promotional value. And so we're not going to shut something down because of the exposure that someone's getting. But also there's a time and a place for it. And I think when it comes to constantly pushing out promotional content to where the platforms are benefiting and we are not properly monetizing, that's a whole other conversation. But those are through our DSP deals versus our actual recording agreement.
And Eric, do you have artists coming to you asking for advice about how much live streaming they should be doing? Or is everyone just in feeling that they should do as much as possible right now?
I want to particularly highlight a client that Alex and I have together, Aaron Bruno of AWOL Nation. He started a weekly Instagram live show that houses some of the biggest names in the business. And the guy's incredible. He found his sort of groove in terms of how to use social media. And it's become a thing that'll probably live on beyond the coronavirus. But so some people should talk more and some people maybe need to put down a keyboard, right? They're calling me all the time, and I'm on the phone from ever since this thing started, from the beginning of the day to the end. Surprise, surprise, everyone wants to talk to their lawyers. And a smart man once told me, behind every marginally successful artist is a shitty clothing line. And trust me, there's a lot of shitty clothing lines that have been this coronavirus. So I'm on the phone talking about all of them all the time, constantly. And it's a lot of fun. I'm glad that my artists trust me to turn to me to try to ask those types of questions about how they should utilize these platforms in a time of crisis. I love to be there for them. But yes, I'm getting a lot of those phone calls.
Right. Are you seeing now that, do you think there will be a shift now after COVID-19 towards, I think physical is already struggling, but it just feels like streaming is going to be the focus of most of your independent label deals?
I completely abandoned. I've released 2 big records. AWOL Nation released an album a couple weeks ago, and Asking Alexandria released an album last Friday. It's particularly Asking Alexandria is a metal band. That's their roots. That's where they started. So physical was a big deal, and there was still talk about first week and stuff like that. And I'm just completely over that. I'm into streaming.
Great. Well, I think you guys have both made a great argument for why it's so important to have a great attorney on your side, to be working with labels that have great business affairs departments. And obviously the relationship between you, the two of you guys and many other is really the backbone of the industry, and it's really important. So I think that's probably a good stopping point, unless you guys have anything else you want to hit on.
I just want to say thank you, Kari, and thank you to your label for all of its leadership within this organization, because again, you and I have an artist together. Alex and I, again, it is relationships. It is a community. That's what makes A2IM and this week so important. I'm glad we could get together online to talk about it.
Yeah. Thank you guys.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much.